guys, welcome to Jammin and Jammies. I'm Megan Barker. We are sitting down with our favorite music creators, industry leaders, finding out how they got where they are, and getting valuable insights into the music world. Today, we are sitting down with Clif Doyal, who's one of my favorite people. Clif is a publicist here in Nashville, but he has worn many hats. You've danced in many ballrooms. I don't even know what the metaphor would be, but you've done everything. So we're going to talk all about it, but I want to start at the beginning. Hi. Thanks for being
Hi,
here.
thank you for having me, Megan. I
Do
look
you,
forward to it.
I've been looking forward to this too. I love to start at the beginning. Where are you from, and how did you get into music, and how did you get into what you're doing now?
Well, I grew up in a rural area in southwest Missouri. I was actually born in western Oklahoma, where my mother was from, in a little town called Woodward. Not a little town; it's a good-sized town. But I actually grew up in a very rural area in southwest Missouri near a little town called Hurley, Missouri. And it was absolutely a little town. I think at the time that I lived there, it was population 98.
Oh my goodness.
We lived 5 miles out of town, so we were definitely out in the sticks.
Wow.
We lived on a farm, dairy cattle, beef cattle. We milked and did everything you do on a farm, raised crops and hay and vegetable garden. My mother ran the farm. My dad worked on construction, and so it was just my mom and my brother and my older sister. And I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, and that really excited me. There, I'll show my age.
I
Age is a number anyway.
wish I could have seen that.
I did, and it absolutely was. It was a game changer for me, and I knew it at the time, and my mother knew it at the time. I was 5.5, I think, and yeah, I would have been 5.5, not quite 6, and that was really what I thought about. It just consumed me, and I've always loved music. My mother was a big music fan, mainly country music. But so fast forward a few years, I was in middle school, and my teacher, Carmela Bartels, my music teacher, said, "We've got a Christmas program up here, and I want you to play bongos in the Christmas program."
Oh wow.
And so I said, "Okay." So I did, and I that was my first time to be in front of an audience, and I was scared and excited and everything all at once,
You
And
were
so
bit by the bug.
yeah, it was my big, and I'm kind of setting out from the chorus a little bit, so I'm kind of over by myself and kind of getting spotlighted there, and it was very exciting. And so when it was over, she told me, "Well, you did great. Now you have to get a drum set for the spring concert." And I said, "Well, I don't, well, you have to play drums in the spring concert." That's what she said. And I said, "I don't have a drum set." And she said, "You'll get one." I said, "I don't have anybody to teach me how to play." She said, "You know how to play drums. You spend your days just pounding out rhythms on your desk. You can do this." And
Wow.
so I remember talking to my mom about it. And long story short, my mom sold a cow, told my dad the cow died, and bought me my first drum set.
Oh my gosh.
My dad did not want me to be a musician, and my mom knew that it was already over, so I might as well
Oh.
succumb. She was my biggest fan, though, my mother, and she bought me the drum set. And sure enough, come April or March, whenever the spring concert was, I played, and that was just like I thought I was a rock star. I mean, it was
Did
just
somebody teach you, or did you teach yourself?
no, I taught myself by
Wow.
my mother. Before I even had a drum set, I would take my mother's pots and pans of all different sizes and set them on my bed. And I didn't have headphones, but I had a little like it was a Montgomery Ward or a Sears Roebuck record player, and I would put the Beatles' Abbey Road on and play it over and over and over again while I was pounding on my mother's pots and pans with these carom sticks. Did you ever play caroms? They're kind of
Uh,
like it's almost like a little pool table, but they're just little plastic circles.
Oh,
And you
okay.
got sticks, little small. They're like a miniature pool cue that you play the caroms with, and so I would use those sticks, and that was how I learned how to play.
Wow. So what happened then after that? Like, how did you get into music as a young adult?
Well, one of my classmates was named Bobo Cooper, and Bobo and I had been friends, and he had a guitar, and his father was a Pentecostal minister, and they pastored a church there in Hurley. Mr. Cooper and his wife, and they just kind of adopted me like a son. And I'd spend the night at their house a lot. And Bobo's brother had a drum set. And so me and Bobo would be upstairs at their house with the windows open and just flailing away. And this is before I had a drum set. So I did get a chance to play a real drum set before I actually owned one. And so that was great. And so Bobo and I, we would rehearse at the church, and we started doing some little gigs around. And I'll tell you a funny story. The first gig we did, we played at the Hurley Cafe, and they never had live music before. And of course, they didn't have a stage, and there were just two of us, and we were playing all original music. And I remember that after we played for a little while, some people in the crowd were like, "Oh, why don't you play the jukebox and play along? Why don't we let us play the jukebox and you guys can play along with it?"
Oh Lord.
So, so then we did. We played along with whatever they played on the jukebox, and it was quasi embarrassing because we had just made a big deal out of, this was our
Oh.
first big gig, and it turned out okay, but we ended up realizing you probably need to play a few covers to get people interested in what you're doing.
Yeah.
We didn't do that, so
Oh my goodness. These are
that's
hard
okay.
lessons.
Yeah, hard lessons, man. It was embarrassing because we had on these really bizarre kind of 60s stage clothes type things, bell bottoms. And I think we even put makeup on, like had eye makeup. Like we were all down with Alice Cooper and all that. It was funny. But Bobo and I practiced at the church, and one day we're practicing there, and there were four girls that had a group called the Gospelettes that were kind of the church group. It was, I think, three sisters and a cousin, something like that. One was piano player, and they all sang, and it was like they come and heard, sit and listen to us because they were getting ready to rehearse. There was a PA system at the church, by the way. That's why, and a stage. So we had our own little concert hall to rehearse in. And the girls saw me, and they're like, "Well, would you play with us? Would you play drums with us?" And I said, "Well, sure. I don't really know a lot of gospel music, but I've been coming to the church and I've heard you guys. I think I can play your stuff." And so then I did, and we did a performance at the church, and oh my God, it was like rock and roll. It was like, cuckoo, 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 cuckoo. I mean, it's just real heavy, kind of, and people were screaming and crying and kind of,
Oh
rolling
wow.
around and speaking in tongues. I'm like, wow, this is like a rock show here. So
Yeah.
so I traveled with them around. We played around Southwest Missouri and Kansas. I'm trying to think if we did any gigs anywhere else. I think that was it. Maybe Missouri and Kansas, Arkansas. We played in Arkansas too. And so I was getting paid to do
Yeah.
those gigs. And so that was my first professional experience when I would have been 12.
Wow. You started young. So what happened after that?
Well, of course, Bobo and I, we continued to perform and we got better. And we actually hired another person to play with us. So we weren't just a guitar and drummer. We were like the White Stripes. I was embarrassing because I thought if you didn't have a bass player in the band, you didn't really have a band. And I think we ended up getting a keyboard player. And so we did a few gigs around locally there. No, nothing big. Like um, they call them house concerts now. Back then, it was just private birthday parties or whatever. And of course, all the girls, they would all, you know,
I'm
scream,
sure.
do their little fan thing. And so we had our own little groupies, and
Ah, that's
yeah,
so
we thought we were really going places. Um, but I moved after that. So I would have been in about the eighth grade there. And when I was getting ready to go into the ninth grade, we moved a few miles away to a pretty good sized town called Aurora, Missouri. And I went to high school there for my first 2 years. But during that time, I was at school one day, and one of my classmates came up and he said, "My sister has broke her arm, and we don't have a substitute drummer. Could you come play with us tonight?" And I said, "Well, where are you playing?" And he said, "Nick's Caravan West." And my mind just went, "Oh wow, this is my big break." And so I go and I play, and it's this huge place. It used to be a chicken house back before it was a club. So it was like, probably held a couple thousand people, but on any
wow.
given Saturday night, there might be 100 people there, maybe, unless they had a concert, which I did a couple shows there, and it'd be packed. And all the people I was playing with were adults, all very accomplished musicians, very talented, all um, had almost everybody had played with national artists too,
Wow.
or pursued being a national artist. So
Yeah.
I was a kid with adults that were super talented, and they really kept me in line. And so one night, the drummer Petey, the her dad was the band leader. Her husband was the bass player. So it was a family band, and then there were a couple other people, guitar player, singer. Her, we had a couple of phenomenal singers. Young lady named Joni and her nephew, who was about my age at the time, also sang. And it was the most amazing training ground, learning experience. And Petey came one night, and I played, and I was a bit nervous because she was the most confident person I'd ever been around. I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Think sewing machine. Just think sewing machine. Steady, just steady, steady. Keep the groove. You want to play too much."
Yeah.
And so I took that to heart, but then I would throw in these little tom fills like I would hear Russ Kunkel do on Carly Simon's record,
Yeah.
or something like that, James Taylor record. Russ had a way of, he would hit those toms. It would just be this big voice, and he would go right back into the groove. And I tried that one night, and they all turned around and looked at me like I just, fart or something. And they were like, "Wow, that's cool. We like that." So then I got to figure out where I could kind of shine a little bit, and not and lay back when I needed to. So it was a great learning experience for me. And it was, I hated that she broke her arm, but it was a blessing in disguise
Yeah.
for me.
It worked out well for you.
It worked out well.
Well, how'd you come to be in Nashville then?
Wow. Well, that's a whole longer story. After I left, I'll try to make it short. After I left Aurora, I went to the Middle East. My father was in Saudi Arabia, and my mother was going over, and so I went over and lived there for the better part of a year, and ended up playing in the only band in the northern province of Saudi Arabia while I was there. And
Wow.
that was very cool. And they were all guys from the British Aircraft Corporation, Wales, England, Scotland. Again, these guys were serious. They're probably the best, one of the best bands I've ever heard.
Wow.
Their drummer, to act coincidentally, was from Oklahoma, and he told me he was getting ready to move back there, and he said they're going to be looking for a drummer, and so I auditioned right then that night, and
Wow.
they got me up, and I think we played something by Cream or maybe Sam and Dave. They were just a big seven-piece band with horns, and phenomenal singer from Chicago, black singer. It was just amazing. So So I did that. I moved back to Dallas, and I didn't play music for about a year while I was working during the days and going to school at night to get my high school diploma. So my last 2 years of high school, I went to night school
Mm,
in
interesting.
Dallas. And then when I got out of high school, then I moved back to Aurora and lived with my parents and went to college in Joplin, Missouri. And during that time, I ended up going and playing with that guy that I had started out when I was 13 in that big chicken house club. He called me up and, or maybe came by my house and said, "Hey, I heard you're back in town. I need a drummer." So I went back down there. It felt like I was going backwards a little bit at that point because
I'm
I was
sure,
going back
yeah.
and playing someplace I had played, uh, a lot earlier in my career. But shortly after that, I was recruited by some friends of theirs, and we had a band, and we were very successful playing around that area. Then I was in a group when I was in college in job. I was in a group called Dice. We were two black guys, two white guys.
Great
Uh,
name.
Yeah, and we were seven, and the branding too. Think about it: two black guys, two
Yeah.
white guys. The name of the band's Dice.
Yeah, it's great.
We had these great big square board things that were dice that we would set up around us. So we had stage set,
That's
we
so
had
cool.
lighting, we just thought we were awesome. I mean, even I will say that we were recruited by record labels, ended up moving to St. Louis. That was a disaster, and everything that followed was disaster. Other than the music was great, and the singer of the band ended up embezzling from us, and
Oh no,
it all kind of collapsed just as we were talking to Saturday Night Live
you're
uh,
kidding.
about being on the show. Yeah, it was. So anyway, long story short, I tucked my tail between my legs and got back to Aurora, and ended up after that, then ended up moving to Oklahoma, and I stayed there for a decade. I built really the business I have now was built in those days because I started a booking agency really by accident in 1984. And one of the acts I was helping at that time was an unknown Toby Keith. And so I was Toby's first agent. And before long, I had like 10 acts I was helping because I had built up a circuit of clubs where my band was playing in Oklahoma, North Texas, Kansas, Missouri, and I had a whole circuit built up. And we'd play. I mean, we were extremely successful, extremely busy. By that time, again, I was heading my own band, and the we were breaking up one night. We'd come to kind of an end of this one group, and I was getting ready to launch a new one. And the singer said, "You ought to think about being a booking agent." And I remember looking at him and go, "Now, Mike, what the hell would I want to do that for?" Because I'd never really worked for a good agent before. I'd really worked for some kind of snaky ones that would tell you what you want to hear, but it wouldn't really be that way when you got to the venue, whatever it was. There was always something. So I thought, maybe I could do this and do it right. And I thought about it a couple of days, and then I launched an agency out of my bedroom in Norman, Oklahoma in 1984. And by 1988, I was covering so much ground with that agency. I was booking all over the Midwest, the Southwest, out east. And I got a call from Warner Brothers one day. And Doug Grau from Warner Brothers here in Nashville called me and I said, "Hey, I'm working with an act called Little Texas. And everywhere we go, everywhere we call down in the Texas market, your name keeps coming up. You need to call Clif Doyal. You need to call." So he said, after about three times, I'm like, okay. So
I'll call him.
here I am. And he told me they were working on a record, but it wasn't solidified. I don't think they were officially signed to Warner Brothers. I think Doug Grau was just nurturing them.
Yeah.
He and their manager, Christy DiNapoli, had gone to college together. So
Okay.
that's uh, that's how that started. So he sent me a demo tape, and I literally booked them sight unseen into a club in Arkansas so I could go see them. And the next week, the biggest, baddest club in the state of Oklahoma, Tulsa City Limits, the following week. My thought was, I'll go see them the first week. If they suck, I'll pull the second week. But I knew from hearing the demo tape, it had to be real.
So
It's
wait,
not,
just out of curiosity, was there anything on the demo tape that we know?
I don't think there is from that
Okay,
very first demo tape. Now, there's some stuff on there that certainly could have been known.
sure, it was good.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it was that good. I think it's a project they'd done with Craig Cramp, and
Okay.
I do still have it. And there were some really cool songs on there. What they ended up actually, though, eventually recording and releasing on their first album was written mostly during the time that I had them on the road working. I think before their first record came out, the first single in '92, we had worked 13 states and I think did 4 appearances on Star Search before the first single hit the market. We covered a lot of ground.
Mhm.
So that's how I got to Nashville. So I worked for the band for a couple years, and Doug calls me one day and said, "I hear you're moving to Nashville." And I said, "Well, yeah, I am," because I had a project that's getting ready to shop, and I had another project that was close to shopping. I said, "Yeah, I am." He said, "Well, I want to meet with you as soon as you get here."
Were you actually planning to move to Nashville? Or you
I
just
was, but not as soon as it came down. So he said, "Well, I want to meet with you as soon as you get here." And I said, "That's great. What's your calendar look like?" And he said, "Well, what about Tuesday or Thursday at 2 o'clock?" I said, "That sounds great." He said, "Oh, great. I'll see you then." He hung up.
Oh no.
My wife, who we weren't married at the time, but we were living together and working together, she my business partner, Kathy, she looked at me and she said, "What did you just say?" And I said, "You ready to move to Nashville?" And she's like, "Are you crazy? What do you mean?" I said, "Well, we've talked about this, and this is our chance, and I'm going, and I want you to come with me." So this is Monday, by the way, and
Oh my
I've
Lord.
already told this guy I meet him on
Oh, I'm
Thursday.
so stressed just hearing this story.
Well, it gets worse or better depending on how cruel you think. Um, Yeah, so we rented the biggest U-Haul we could find. We put all of our stuff in it, and us and our parrot Joe, and I think that's yeah. Joe belonged to my current wife Kathy, but her and Patty were best friends. So Joe Parrot and us, and then the sound man in one of my bands that I was getting ready to shop. He drove my car, and we made our way to Nashville. Well, on the way, uh, we stopped to get gas, and unbeknownst to him, he filled up my car, and half the tank was full of water.
Oh,
So the first day and every day until I pulled the tank and drained it myself, uh, the car, when you turn a corner, the car would die. Because what's
oh
happening is
no.
as you're turning the corner, the gas is sliding away, and the intake thing is just sucking up water that's on the top.
Wow.
And so there was that, and I rented a house over the phone that a friend of mine had found for me. And Jesus, don't ever don't ever do that.
Oh no.
It
How,
was a disaster to say the least.
did you stay there?
We stayed there until I was able to break the contract because the landlord wouldn't fix the heat and it was winter
Oh,
time. So we were there for about 6 months.
oh God.
And then we got into a great little condo over by the lake, and so then it got better. But the first few months in Nashville was very stressful.
And Kathy was like, "What have you done?"
Oh, now one day at the store, she's like, "Take me to the bus station now." I said, "What?"
Oh,
She's like, "I'm going home. I'm out of here. I'm done." And so I'm like, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll do better."
oh.
So I finally talked her into staying, and she did stay. But
Wow. Okay,
yeah, so
well
that
then
was
how did you come from being a booking agent to publicity?
Well, I actually came about it as an agent and with my own bands. I was managing my band, so management was something that kind of was innate. It was kind of a was part of the program. So I was actually managing acts before I was doing publicity. When I came to Nashville, I was managing an artist out of Tulsa named Larry Cagle, who still today is one of the most talented guys I've ever worked with. Larry actually was scouted by Arista Real Hard and a couple of other labels, but it wasn't meant to be. He moved back home. His wife got pregnant at the time, and he left. But so I was already managing acts that were touring full blown acts. And so I brought that skill set from my bands to the table to manage acts. The PR thing really came about when my late wife, Kathy, was dying from breast cancer 20 years ago this year. um, my publicist, I'm sorry, my business manager, Clyde Bright, very well known in the music industry, called me and he said, Cliff, I've got a young couple in my office and she's a former Miss Kansas and they're looking for a booking agent. And I said, well, just tell them to keep on looking. I'm not doing that anymore. And he said, now, Cliff, don't be hasty. He said, your phone's not ringing, is it?
Wow.
I said, no, it's not, Clyde. He said, I know it's not. He said, take their call. They need everything. So I said, okay, give him my number. So the next day, the guy called me with his wife, and he's, made the introduction, and I said, so what are you looking for? He said, well, we need a booking agent. I said, well, I'm not doing that anymore. Next, and he said, we need a publicist, and I said, I'm your man. I'm your guy.
Wow.
I'd never been a publicist for a third party before, but I'd done work for my own bands, like booking us on television shows or radio shows or writing press release or writing a bio, but I didn't really think about that as publicity.
Yeah.
And so I thought, well, heck, I've done this for my own bands. I could surely do it for someone else. I took the project on and crushed it. I mean, I crushed it. She was part of a multi level marketing group that did these conventions around America. So she would, like, for example, they'd go to Raleigh or they'd go to Dallas, and they would be in like a huge convention center, excuse me, with all these people from all over the country coming to be a part of this. I would book her in the local Barnes and Noble where she could sell her book, she could sell her CD and perform, and all of the people who loved her and knew her from these marketing organizations would come support her, and it was a huge success.
Wow, that's
And it was
amazing.
kind of out of the gate. It was a way to approach touring and marketing in a very unconventional
Yeah.
way. I mean,
Yeah.
there wasn't a lot of people that were quote doing bookstore tours at that
Right.
point, but it worked for her.
Yeah. Well, I
And so
and I,
that's how I got started.
well, and I was going to say I've told you this before because I've heard these stories before, but I admire your tenacity so much because that's two stories you just told us where someone made a phone call to you and asked you, "Are you going do you do this?" and you were like, "Yep." I just love that. I think that's you are like the epitome of just like jump now and learn how to fly on the way down. You know what I'm saying? So,
That's the
yeah,
only way to do it.
it's the only way
If
to do
you
it.
if you stand at the edge of the water and you don't dive in, you'll never know if you can swim.
That's right. That's why I love you. That's why we get along so well. Okay, you have the most interesting story. I do want to ask you some standard questions here. So like you kind of touched on it just now. So what exactly for people who don't know, there's so many job titles in the music industry. What does a publicist do? What is PR?
A publicist works with an artist to amplify the artist's brand to the bigger world, the bigger marketplace. So what I do when I'm working with an artist is I really try to get to the heart of who they are, what they're about, what makes them tick, and then try to figure out, okay, where can we go with this? and sometimes I put my manager hat on and look at it from the big,
Yeah,
360 picture,
right.
because I think about, okay, when I'm working with an artist, I'm not thinking about just, can we get a story in a media outlet? That's
Yeah.
that's what the goal is. I mean, you want to get coverage, you want to get reviews for the artist. And so what I do is I work with an artist, I work to get the story together to their approval, and then I put it out to media outlets to try to get coverage, whether it's through print or internet or television, radio, whatever it is. But at the same time, I'm not thinking about, okay, we're going to go just do this one thing. I'm thinking about, what can we do here that really impacts the artist's career? And sometimes that will involve a change in direction,
Yeah.
maybe such as yourself. I mean, we've worked before this current single,
Hmm.
which, by the way, everybody, if you've not heard Cowboys Church by Megan Barker and Zane Williams, you're missing out. So go to your favorite DSPs and listen, because it's an amazing song.
Thank
But
you.
like you, Megan, we had
Mhm.
worked in the past together. And when you brought me this song, I said, wow, that's really a departure for you. And you said, well, it's really something that I feel close to my heart, and I feel like this is, a direction I want to move in. And so we started talking about, so for me, that opened up like a whole, okay, well, this is a Texas song. This is a song
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
and again, that's my manager or label hat from the past, having worked in that market and knowing, and then of course having Zane involved helps. But that just like, wow, it's a no brainer. This is a way
Yeah.
to break you into the Texas market, and so far you're getting attention down there. It's starting to take off.
Thanks to you. Yeah.
Well, no, it's us. You laid a lot of ground, and see, this is where I want to stress to everybody. It's not just me here pulling knobs behind the curtain like, Wizard of
Yeah.
Oz. It really does take the artist being actively engaged in their own career, making their own decisions, and you've done that. You went to Texas, you performed, you met and opened up for Zane's band, The Wilder Blue. You aligned with an agent down there to help you book. So you have worked really hard to make this happen. All I'm doing is picking up the brand that you are building here and helping you amplify that. So it's not all thanks to me. It's great work on your part, and knowing who you are intuitively without me having to say, "Oh, this is what it is."
Yeah.
You already had the foundation laid. I just came
Thank
in and
you.
agreed with you.
Well, that's why I like you. No, no, no. But you have this vision, and I think it all stems from you have a musical background yourself. You've been an artist yourself. You've been on the road. You've done all of it. So, I also, you were just talking about laying the groundwork as an artist, and that was one thing I wanted to ask you. If there's a young artist watching this right now, what kind of groundwork should they be laying if they are thinking about putting out a project a year from now or whatever it is, and they are going to want to do publicity PR for that? What should they be doing now to prepare?
Well, I think you need to know who you are.
Yeah.
You need to, excuse me, you need to be able to look at yourself kind of like the outside looking in. You have to be able to look at yourself objectively and
Yeah.
going, where do I fit? And then take your music and really kind of focus on a brand.
Yeah.
Know who you are, and also have something to say when the time comes to where people want to talk with you. Anything that you have that's a story that you can help to build, like you have so much to draw on because of your history of being the child of a famous songwriter. So you've grown up around this business. You know who you are. You've experimented in your style and your sound, but it's still who you are. And now you're on to something, I don't know what stage you are in your career, but you didn't start doing this yesterday. And you're at a stage in your career where you've made what I would call calculated risk by moving in a direction that people aren't necessarily expecting from you. I think that's another thing. You have to be ready when I call it preparation meets opportunity. And that's what I would tell every artist, be prepared when the opportunity comes. Then that's where magic happens because you're ready for that opportunity and you never know where that's going to come from.
Right.
And my main thing is if you're going to make an album and you're going to spend money on this record, a lot of artists spend all their money. They get down, they don't have anything left to promote with. I
I've
mean,
done that. That was a hard lesson.
I
I've
mean
done that.
nothing to promote with. And
Yeah.
and then the record comes and they just throw it up on a delivery service and I call it stillborn. No one hears it
Yeah.
or very few people hear it. Maybe they're fans. And unless you're a real established artist, you just can't do that. You just can't drop something on Apple Music at midnight and
Yeah.
expect that millions of people are going to find it.
That's right. You have to be Beyonce for that to
Yeah, you
happen.
you just you can't. Unfortunately, as an entry level artist, you're not Beyonce, you're not Lady Gaga, you're not Dua Lipa. You can't just drop something and go, oh wow, the whole world loves me.
Yeah.
No, you have to go find your audience, and a good publicist can help you do that.
Yeah. I agree.
And so that's what I always recommend is like know that as you move along, you're going to need other people on your team, whether it's a publicist or a digital strategist or a manager or a booking agent. It really takes a village,
Yeah.
and you have to be prepared to listen to input from other people,
Hmm.
take what you need and leave the rest.
Yeah. Yeah. I everything you say is absolutely spot on in my opinion. And I love that when preparation meets opportunity, I call that the definition of luck. That's when people say, "Oh, you're so lucky." It's like, "No, an
Yeah,
opportunity presented itself and I was ready for it."
exactly.
Yeah, which sucks because waiting is the hardest part. You got to do all the hard work over here and like wait for, something cool, an opportunity, a door to open.
And nothing happens quick.
Nothing happened. Oh,
That's the
don't
other
I
thing.
know it?
Yeah, I mean, I want to share that with artists more than anything, entry level artists. Nothing happens quick.
Yeah.
Nothing. And even the most successful acts in the world fail. Don't be afraid to fail. Make what you love, make what you feel like is the best you can make. Get at least a part of a team around you and put it out. And I always say, put it out and hope people like it.
Yeah,
Because once it leaves your hands, you have no control
it's
over it.
true.
You
It's
have no
true.
control over, and who knows what the public is going to like. If I told you that I knew what the public likes, I
Nobody
would use
knows.
that knowledge and I'd probably be sitting on a beach somewhere drinking
That's
something
right.
out of an umbrella,
Yeah.
really.
But that's the thing, like labels don't even know. Label execs, I've had meetings, I have friends that have had meetings, we've all talked about it, and it's like one label or publisher, whatever, says this, and then this other group of people said the opposite because
Right.
nobody knows. It's all very subjective, you know?
It is.
So,
And that's what I always say is like, make the music that you believe in with all your heart and find people to help you put it in the right places, whether it's a distributor or any of the multitude of pieces that you have to come to. But it all starts with the music. Make something
amen.
compelling, that's raw and real and organic. And when I say raw, I don't mean a demo tape garage sound, although if that's what you do, then that's great.
But
What I say about raw
what's
is just
you?
make it you. Make it to where I want something to make me cry. I want something to make me laugh. I want something to make me happy. Make something that moves people.
Yeah.
That's what I say. Just
And I
make
truly think what moves people is when you are authentic. That's a
yes.
comment that I get a lot, and I'm so always baffled when people say that and they're like, "You're so authentic." I'm like, "Well, I don't know how to be anybody else." But I think there are so many artists that come to town and they don't know themselves yet. So what
Right.
do? They try to be Taylor Swift. They try to be whoever. And hopefully along the way, you find who you are. But it's a hard thing to do, is to
It
find your
is.
own voice and be confident in it.
It is. And that's again, you've nailed it. Find your own voice and be confident in it. That's really you've said what really would be my best advice. Find your own voice and be confident in it.
It
That's
takes
what you have.
time. It takes
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
And it's just as likely to happen for you as it is for the next.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, there's a lot of great talent out there, and who knows what's going to break through. But if you're good enough to compete, you're just as likely to get a break as the next person.
Yeah.
It's like no one knows. It's you can't really quantify that and go, okay, if you do step A, B, C, D, then you'll automatically get to E. No, sometimes you
Mhm.
have to do step A and then you do B and then you got to go back to A and then maybe you go to minus A.
Yeah. It's so true. I always tell people, if you can do something else in this
Do
world,
it.
do that, because
Do it.
music is such a headache and a heartache, and it's just exhausting because it's not like becoming a lawyer and you go to school and you do these things. There's no one path. If you read different musicians' Wikipedias, they're all different. Their opportunities all came in weird, random ways. And that's something that always baffles me too, is I'm never not amazed at, if I hadn't have gone to that event that I didn't want to go to and happened to bump into so and so, never would have had this opportunity. The butterfly effect in the music industry is fascinating.
It really is. And you said another thing too that's very important, and that's networking.
Yeah.
Networking and being seen, like, and being present, must be present to win.
Yeah, man.
If you're going to make surfboards, don't live in Kansas.
That's
You know,
right.
move to the coast.
Yeah.
You want to make it in the music business, move to a music center. If you're in the songwriting world, Nashville is the greatest songwriting town on the
Yeah.
planet.
Truly.
I would challenge anybody to show me an example of another city with as much of a vibrant songwriter base as we are blessed to have here.
Yeah.
There isn't one. I mean, you have to go back to the Brill building in New York City in the 60s to really find anything that even compares to Nashville, because you had
Yeah.
Carole King, you had Jerry Goffin, you had Neil Diamond,
The
you had
heyday.
all these very talented, amazing talents in the Brill building, that, that epicenter of, and everything that came out of that, we have that here in Nashville,
Yeah.
and no one else has this.
Yeah.
And
So,
so if you want to make it in music, move to Nashville, but get ready to pay your dues. And, everybody comes and they think, well, I'm going to be the exception to the rule.
yeah.
This is going to happen really fast for me because I'm ready. No, I hear this all the time. Well, no, it's not going to be that way for me. It's going to happen really fast. Well, it doesn't happen fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I can think of very few artists that it's happened fast for. And I've worked with a lot of artists that made it. It didn't happen fast. And they had to
Yeah.
work really hard. And
Yeah.
even once they got that break to the record deal or whatever, and I've worked with a lot of acts that have gone on to be very successful as a booking agent, as a publicist, as a manager, whatever my role was at the time. But it never gets easier.
I think it
Never.
gets harder, honestly,
It,
because there's more to juggle.
it
Um,
does get harder.
I think that's a big misconception, and you have to understand, when you come to Nashville and you get a record deal, that's when the work begins.
Well, just getting a deal is not the end all be
Right.
all. As a matter of fact, for most artists now, I would say don't even focus on a deal.
In this
Focus
day and
on
time, yep.
focus on building a moving train.
Hmm.
Focus on writing, recording, touring, releasing music, because the first question they're going to ask you when you come into a record label meeting now, or a meeting with a major booking agency or a manager, the first question most of them they're going to ask you is, what are your numbers?
Hmm.
What are your Spotify numbers? What are your Instagram numbers? What are your all of your social media numbers, your YouTube?
That's right.
Back when I came to town, the first question they would have was, "Hey, what you got? Play us
Yeah.
three of your favorite songs." They wanted to know about the music first. It's not that way anymore.
No. Do you,
The numbers are an entry point now.
Do you think it'll go back? Because, even I've been in town full time, like 7 years. And even when I first got here and I was having meetings, it was play us some songs. Play us your favorite song. What have you written lately? And it's only these last 2 or 3 years that and sure, Instagram and Facebook were numbers were important. Your Spotify was important. But it really does seem like it's the last couple years with TikTok that this whole thing has
Yes.
changed. You see it
Yes.
changing?
Um, well, and I mean this. I'm just a dead honest guy. I don't know that a lot of people in positions of power to sign people at record labels are. I see a lot of people that just aren't music people. They're numbers people. They're not music
Agreed.
people.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what our industry really needs back is music people. Because like when I came to town, the people running record labels were producers.
Yeah.
It was Harold Shedd, who
Yep.
produced Alabama and KT Oslin and Billy
Yeah.
Ray Cyrus and just on and on. He ran a record label,
Yep.
first Mercury and then Polydor, and you had um, Tim Dubois,
Mm-hmm.
famous songwriter for Restless Heart, and
Yep.
just on and on. He ran Arista Records. I mean, when I came to town, many of the label heads were producers. James Stroud, same way. James was famous producer. He produced Little Texas, as a matter of fact, along with several other acts I was working with at that time. But he was a label head. He
Yeah.
he headed it up Giant Records,
And
who were just across the street from me on Music Row.
yeah, and that's why I think these changes are so recent because again, just 5 years ago, I have a great relationship with someone who he's moved on now, but he was the head of one of the biggest labels in town. And I was so nervous and excited to meet with him, and it went really well. But you know what? He was a publisher for 20 years. He was a song guy. And
Right.
but he was running the label side. And I remember thinking what you just said. It's like, I'm so glad he's a song guy because that's my game is music. But anyway, so I feel like it's a recent change. And you're right. It seems like it also seems, and this is, I don't mean anything too negative by it, but it does seem like every person who's being appointed these roles is a Belmont grad. You know what I mean? And it used to be that they were just people from all over with different musical backgrounds.
Well, and yeah, and a lot of times they were musicians themselves,
Yes.
or they were touring themselves, or they were a sideman, or
Yeah,
they come from a bedrock musical background. They haven't gone to school to learn it. They've learned it out there on their own. And
that's
there's
right.
nothing wrong with Belmont graduates or nothing
No.
wrong. No, it's just the point is that back then that really wasn't the case.
Yeah,
It was more about the person at the top that was
yes.
making the decisions was a music person. They
Uh,
were, again, a publisher.
yeah, like a music business degree wasn't a prerequisite. You know what I
Right.
mean? Yeah,
No, it
yeah,
wasn't. And most of the guys that I worked with back in those days probably didn't have any musical degree or
right.
education. Like James. James was a drummer and a
Yeah,
really good drummer,
yeah,
but that was his background. He had been a studio musician,
yeah,
so he knew great talent.
yeah. And
He
this went
worked
for
with them.
like every role, even song pluggers, same thing. They had a musical background. They were involved in music in some level. So it's a
Yeah.
strange time. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I always tell people, and I'm sure you agree, it's such a great time and a difficult time. I think to be an artist, it's more great because you have every opportunity in the world that all the cards are in your hand. You can post and maybe you'll go viral, and it's all in your control. And kind of the amount of success you get maybe comes from how much effort you're putting into it. I don't know. I feel like I work pretty hard and I've never had a viral video though, so I don't know. But it's also difficult because of that. It's like it kind of feels like everybody's gone viral and everybody is kind of tired of that now. So I don't know where things are going and I'm just rambling.
I don't know. I'm always interested in like artists that get signed from this viral kind of situation. And
Yeah.
there's a young female out there right now that I won't name, but she's a viral sensation and was signed, and I think may have just put her first album out. She definitely has released a couple singles, but that's where she came from. She came from that
Yeah.
viral world of a TikTok video that people went crazy over. And, you know, so for her, that's the entry point.
Yeah.
That's what got her there. So, but, I will say this about today's musical market. It is very crowded and very competitive, more so than ever.
Yeah.
But with all the tools that artists have at their disposal now,
Hmm.
whether it's TikTok or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or whatever the tools that are out there, and the delivery platforms, the DSPs, where you can put your music, the gatekeepers aren't in charge anymore. Like the
Yeah.
inmates have taken over the asylum.
That's right.
And and because of that, again, if you build a moving train and then you get noticed and you got the numbers, you got the song, you got the music, you got other stuff to back it up with, you've got the story, boom, you're on your way. And I
Yeah.
see it happen all the time. And a lot, and sometimes I'm not surprised because I know the artist, I watch them. I do make it a point to keep up with the business and stay relevant. Who's out
Yeah.
there? What are they doing? I love watching new artists grow, and explode. And there's an artist out working right now. I hate to take away from where we're at here, but it's just a point. There's an artist out there right now named Grace Bowers, who's an incredible guitar player. I mean, I met her about a year ago the first time, and I told her then, I'm like, you are one of the best guitar players I've heard in I can't remember when. Like you're on par with some of the greatest guitarists ever. And I don't say that lightly. And she was 17 at that time. Well, in the last year, she has exploded. She got a real aggressive publicist slash manager working with her who started connecting her and connecting the dots. And now she's out, working with Slash and working
Wow.
with, some of the biggest shows. She's playing on some of the biggest festivals in America.
Yeah.
And last year, she was a high school girl.
It's crazy. So did she go viral?
I'm sure she did.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
but a lot of what it was is just everybody in Nashville who was kind of in that Nashville, East Nashville music scene knew Grace. So
Yeah.
everybody, all of us are going, it's just a matter of time for this girl.
Right.
She's gonna, and again, it took a lady coming in who had connections, who had Grace's best interest and her vision at heart, and she helped Grace really begin to unlock doors.
Yeah.
And
See,
so before long, she's in Billboard. She's in, the Tennessee, and she's playing the New Year's bash downtown in front of
wow.
how many 125, 50, 200. I don't know how many people.
A lot of people.
She's playing that. So it can happen really fast if you have the talent and you have the drive and the stick to itiveness. It's just as likely to happen for you as anybody else.
Yeah. And I think
And I
like
mean,
Lee,
I'm talking to the general people out there. It can happen
yeah.
to anybody if they
Yeah.
work hard for it.
I think like the Lainey Wilson story is great because it seems like it happened overnight and she's the epitome of working hard and
Wasn't she
grinding.
down for like 11 years before
Hmm.
it happened for her?
Yeah. Yeah.
They always say this is a 10-year town, but in reality, a lot of artists are here longer than that. And then they get their shot.
Yeah.
Again, they're here and they're
Well,
in the game.
yeah, it's a 10-year town, but man, I mean, I've been working at this since I was 13 years old. It's like I think it's really it's just your life or it isn't. So,
It's your life or it isn't. And you said something earlier that's so true. If you don't have to do this, don't. There's a lot of easier ways to make a living, a lot less stress. But if you wake up every day and you have to do this,
yeah.
it's just you wake up and that's the first thing on your mind and you're just on fire with it, then do it. That's,
Yeah.
if you have to do it, then do it. If
Yeah.
you don't.
No,
Do something.
there's so many people that come to town and they think that this is something else, and it's a life thing. It's a lifelong thing, I think.
The life
So,
thing. And even me,
yeah,
people might look at me and go, wow, it's done all this stuff and, wow, cool. Sometimes I'm amazed at, okay, here's the deal. yes, I did some great things in my career. I've had some amazing opportunities. I've worked with some amazing people. I've worn almost every hat in the box because I wanted it that way.
Yeah.
But I'm still hungry for what that next thing might be.
Yeah.
And so I'm always have my eye out for new talent. And my life is the same way. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah.
Some months and some years I'm killing it, and other times I'm wondering, what am I going to do next? Not outside of music, but just in music.
Yeah.
I've
What's next?
reinvented myself so many times, but I bring all that skill set to the table with me when I'm working with an artist, whether it's management or publicity, whatever it is. I bring all that knowledge to the table that I have, whatever that might be that would help them, then I bring that to the table. It doesn't matter what they've hired me to do. I'll bring all my skill set to the table with me.
Well, and I think that's part of why everybody loves you. You're quite beloved in town, by the way. There's been a number of times lately that I brought up your name and someone was like, "Oh man, I just love Clif." People trust you. And I'm sorry, that's not something that can be bought or built overnight. That's something that just happens with time and being a good person and choosing the right things to be a part of and the right people to associate yourself with. And all of that is just a lot of hard work that you're quite beloved.
Well, that's good to know. I
hmm
appreciate you.
Even Miss Patty the other day, I did a phone interview with Patty, and she just said that she would. I think she said she would do anything for you. Anytime you call, it's a yes.
I love Patty McClintock. She's an amazing human. Well, Megan, I just treat people like I would like to be treated, and for me, it's like I'm all here. It's nothing behind the curtain. This is what you see is what you get, and good, bad, or ugly. And uh, if you can't be honest and transparent, then that's another thing I would tell artists is like be honest and be transparent with your team, with yourself, with your spouse, with whoever. You know, always come with your true self and don't try to be something that you're not. Because
Yeah.
look, I'm not up on some pedestal. I'm just a working stiff that gets up every day like you do, put my pants on one leg at a time, and just thank God I get to do this again.
Yeah.
That's I have a saying that I really believe in. It's I wake up every day on fire thinking this could be the day that changes the rest of my life. And when I stop believing that, then I won't do this anymore because
That's
I'm always thinking that next call, that next. I mean, even while we're doing this, I hear my phone in the other room ring, and I'm going, "Wow, wonder what's on that phone call." Wonder who's calling me.
yeah.
It literally, the next phone call can change your life, and
It's true because the
I
butterfly
believe
effect, like we talked about.
that's a wonderful. I love that the butterfly effect. It's
But
so true.
it's so true. I love that. I think I've said before that I think that's the good and maybe the not so good part of what we do is you can't quit because gosh, what if the next call is it? You know?
The minute you give up is when things are gonna pop for you. And
Mm.
I've seen that happen before too. I've seen artists sabotage themselves at the 11th hour just as the door was opening because they got afraid or they got cold feet or they didn't
Yeah.
think they were worthy or something came up and they let the opportunity go. And that's why I always say is that preparation meets opportunity thing.
Yeah.
That is art and commerce are a weird thing. Art is one thing, commerce is another. You can make art, but can you monetize it to work for you?
Yeah.
And that's the tricky part where art and commerce meet. But if your preparation and your opportunity meet, that's that's where commerce happens because people will buy you to book you. They will book you to be on their podcast
Love
or
that.
they'll
Yeah.
call you to sing background or sing on their show or to be part of the festival. It's
Yeah.
all happens that way.
Yeah.
So don't ever think nobody's paying attention,
Yeah.
because they are. And if you play for 5 people, put on the same show you would do for 50,000 people, because one of those people in that crowd could move the needle for your career, and you never know where that might be. And I've heard the most out there off grid things where people were playing and somebody in the audience knew somebody at a record label or was a touring artist or something. You never know who's going to be out there, and you never get a second chance to make a first impression. So don't
Oh,
let the opportunity pass you up when the opportunity presents itself. Be
that's right.
ready to grab that golden ring and go for it and step up to that next level of your career, whatever that might be.
I'm fired up.
I want you to be fired up. I mean,
I
I,
wish we could talk every morning and I'd just be like hyped all day. You're like a motivational speaker. I love it.
I appreciate that. Well, it's real. I mean, it's
Yeah.
again, I'm grateful that I get a chance to do this, and I still have amazing talents that want to work with me, like And so I'm so grateful for that, because a lot of people maybe at my stage of life would be jaded or want to get out and do something else, and I'm just not at that point. I'm still looking for that next challenge, that next cool thing that's going to help me and that artist, whatever that might be.
You've got the best spirit and such a good head on your shoulders, and that's why you're good at what you do. And I'm so grateful to know you and to get to work with you, and I'm excited about what we've got going on. And I set out a while ago, I was feeling kind of lost and burnout last year, and I was like, what the heck am I doing? Those moments that artists have after a while. And I was like, you know what? I've been chasing industry people for so long. I'm going to stop doing that. And I want to build a team around me of people that believe in my music and believe in me and are hungry and wake up every day with a good, mentality. And I'm so grateful that the universe brought us together because yeah, I just feel like we align, and I'm grateful to have your energy. So,
Well, me too. Thank you very much for
yeah.
those kind words. I feel the same way about
Yeah.
you.
Oh, okay. Well, I feel like we talked so much about everything. Maybe we'll do a part two sometime and delve into more stuff, but I don't want to keep you. So thank you for sitting down and chatting with me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for having me. I'm truly honored, Megan.
I think this will be great for artists, for maybe somebody who wants to be in PR, who knows, or a music manager or booking agent or whatever. We covered so much ground. So thank you very much. And maybe we'll do a part two sometime.
That sounds great. Thank you, Megan.
Have a good one. Bye.
Bye bye.